What's up, broskies? Damocles here, and today I'm bringing my updated Pokemon Unite solo queue tier list. This is going to be a ranking of the best Pokemon to carry yourself alone to Masters in Pokemon Unite when you're playing ranked. So if you like this content and you want to see more of it, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and the like button down below if you haven't already. That would mean the world to me. And also follow me on TikTok for quick guides or Twitter for more Pokemon Unite updates and news and stuff like that. All the links are in the description below. But without further ado, let's just hop into it, shall we? So, you guys might have noticed I changed from, can 1v9 carry to dominant just because I think it maybe will help out people to understand the tier list a little bit better, but you guys let me know what you think. And again, we're talking about solo queue carry performance. We're talking about the best Pokemon to, if your team is doing nothing, what is going to carry you to Masters, what's going to win you games, right? So keep that in mind, please. If you want to see other guides about various roles, or you want to see separate tier lists, please drop a comment down below and let me know what you think, because I'm always open to discussion. But starting it off, first dominant character is going to be Zeraora. This Pokemon is nasty right now. It is phenomenal in the jungle. It really doesn't have any bad jungle matchups. It doesn't have any bad lane matchups either, but you want to play this character in the jungle. Discharge is just an insane move. He counters so many super strong picks in the meta, from carries like Greninja to Cinderace to literally anybody. Decidueye just stomps all over Decidueye. And so Zeraora is going to just destroy teams for you. If you are trying to carry in the jungle, definitely consider taking a look and picking up Zeraora, because the character is just insane. It's good all over the place. Make sure you run Discharge though, because Discharge is just bonkers. So Zeraora, first dominant character. I mean, you know what I mean when I say dominant, right? Like the matchups for this thing are just insane. It will fight anything and win most of the time. So Zeraora, fantastic pick right now. What else have we got here? Ninetales. Ninetales, I'm going to actually put Ninetales into B tier. This is an improvement from the last tier list, I believe. I think it was in D tier before. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it in C. I'm going to put it in C. It saw some buffs, and the buffs are nice, but is it still the best carry in the world if you're trying to carry solo? No. Especially against other special attack characters. There are just some really strong special attackers in the game right now. And while Ninetales is nice and the buffs helped it a little bit, really it still has some of the old problems that Ninetales always had, where it's just hard to get those solo queue, those solo carry, high damage games, right? You're still going to need some teammates to back you up. So Ninetales is moving from D to C tier. I believe that I had it in D tier last time, but it bumped up a little bit. Still a fun character to play. It's just, when you look at the overall landscape of special attack characters that you could play, is Ninetales going to be your immediate go-to? Probably not, right? Who else do we got here? Let's do Charizard, shall we? Charizard is going to be an S tier. Charizard's damage output throughout the entire course of the game is pretty substantial and nice to have. It doesn't have any super weak points, right? Like, you can still get kited and stuff like that, and the Unite changes hurt it in some ways, like objective control, but helped it in other ways, like its anti-carry potential. And so Charizard, when you are playing in a game where the enemy carry is just super fed and is destroying your entire team, Charizard is a fantastic anti-carry. It's probably one of the best anti-carries in the entire game, meaning it's really good at soloing out that one person on the enemy team that's doing really well and just making it so they can't play the game of Pokemon Unite. And that's why Charizard is an S tier. You can play it in the lane, you can play it in the jungle if you want to. Is it the overall best pick in the world? No, but it has very favorable matchups against most of the other Pokemon on this list, right? If you pop a Charizard Unite move, or you just get into a 1v1 with a Charizard, like a Fire Blast or a Flare Blitz Charizard, you're going to have a bit of a rough time. And so for that reason, it's going to be an S tier. It's just a fantastic anti-carry. It's probably what the best anti-carry in the entire game is, in my opinion. Who else we got here? Greedent. Greedent was S tier in the last tier list. It's going to be an A tier in this tier list, only because It did see some nerfs. Is it the best tank for solo queue? Probably still yes. Before it was just super busted OP because of its belch spam, but it is still a defender, so I kind of want to drop it into B tier because generally defenders and supports in solo queue as far as carry potential, not your best options, but it still can do belch spam, right? Still has that same annoying sustain, still has that staying power, so I'm going to put it in A tier just because if you are going to play a defender in this game for solo queue and trying to carry, Greedent is probably going to be your go-to. It's just obnoxious, and it's probably the closest thing that we have right now to a defender that can actually like carry games, right? Think like pre-nerf Blastoise, right? So that's where Greedent's going to go. Let's do Absol. Absol is going to be an A tier. Absol has some really obvious weak points, right? The farther it gets in the game, it is very squishy. But with that being said, Unite has a very heavy focus on early game characters, and Absol is arguably the best of the early game characters in the game. If you can go and snowball your team's lead at the start of the game, secure those Rotoms, secure those Dreadnoughts, which you can as Absol because you can just beat anybody in a 1v1 like for the first 5 minutes of the game. You're gonna stomp you're gonna stomp the enemy team, and you're gonna be able to go and snowball your team into a favorable position heading into late game, right? So it kind of alleviates some of those issues that you would traditionally have with a character that falls off a little bit later in the game. That's just a Unite power curve problem. If you were doing like a 5v5 tier list, Absol would probably be a lot lower, but for solo queue, taking advantage of people's lack of communication and stuff like that, Absol's phenomenal in shutting down other junglers, and its early game damage is just so insane that it can make up for some of its late game squishier issues. So Absol is going to be in the B tier. What else have we got? Pikachu. Let's do Pikachu. Pikachu's in B tier. I don't think this was a change from the last tier list. Again, Pikachu is a strong special attacker in lane. It's just outside of lane, and in those team fights, it really just starts to fall off. That's just the reality of the situation. I know it has become more popular as more people are trying to do like those 1-1-3 like team strategies, but again, this is solo queue, and that is not the norm, but it is a strong special attacker in lane. It can really bully people out, especially with Electro Ball and Thunder and stuff like that, and it saw some buffs to Volt Charge, but like I said before in previous videos, Volt Tackle, excuse me, it's Volt Tackle Pikachu, I don't think it's going to be that great. And so for that reason, for its strength in lane, but it's kind of its significant fall off afterwards, I'm going to put Pikachu in B tier. It's a solid special attack character. It's just not the best attacker in the game, right? It has some obvious weak points. Let's do D tier, shall we? D tier, I'm going to start off D tier with Slowbro. My boy Slowbro's had a rough go of it, guys. That's just the reality of the situation. This character is fantastic at, very similar to Charizard in that it's an anti-carry type character, right? Like, you can lock one specific Pokemon down for a long period of time with this character, with Surf, with its Slow Beam, with everything. But it is a defender, whereas Charizard is an attacker, right, and can still deal a large amount of damage. It saw some changes, but overall, it's still in a rough spot. And as far as solo queue defenders are concerned, you're probably not going to want to go with Slowbro. It still does its job if you just sit on a point and want to keep people off the point, and it's really obnoxious if you're the enemy carry and a Slowbro's on the other team. But the reality of the situation is that ranking-wise, it's just not up there with the other defenders and all the other carries that exist in the game. When you're playing solo queue, I have to emphasize, when you're playing solo queue, if you are playing alone and you're trying to carry a game. Okay, what else have we got here? Let's do Mamoswine. Mamoswine is going to be in C tier. This is a defender that has more of a late evolution cycle, but its early game damage is actually pretty substantial, and it has some nice CC. It's just your impact, if your team is not helping you, is not really seen at all. That's just the reality of the situation. Very similar issue with Snorlax is that, like, maybe if you are in a competitive or a a 5-stack scenario and you can coordinate with teammates, Mamoswine's going to be a lot better. It's just that from a raw damage outpoint, it's more of a balanced defender, and so it's not going to be the best possible option for solo queue. Although you can go and make some nice plays and set your team up for those plays, it's just your team actually has to follow up on those plays. You know what I mean? So for that reason, Mamoswine is going to be in C tier. It's a defender. That's just the reality, guys. What else have we got here? Gengar. Gengar is going to be back in the A tier. I think it was in A tier last time. Gengar is just in a pretty decent spot right now as far as speedsters and jungle damage dealers are concerned. You can go Hex Sludge if you want to, but Dream Eater Shadow Ball is just really mean towards the enemy team. That's the thing with Gengar, is that once it comes online and you get that Shadow Ball fairly early, which reduces some of the struggles of the old Sludge Hex Gengar build, because Shadow Ball does a ton of damage and it has a really low cooldown. You can kind of circumvent some of the problems that Gengar used to have. And then once you get Dream Eater, you can just pop enemy carries. You can just, if you actually land your abilities, you should be able to 1v1 most people. And the recent Gengar changes basically gave it 5% spell vamp or 8% spell vamp, meaning that he just has a lot more sustain now. And so it's really hard to deal with a strong Gengar. It's not the team destroyer that the original Hex Sludge Gengar used to be, but it is a 100-0, very little counterplay burst assassin, and it does that really, really well. It's probably the best in the game at doing that really well. So Gengar is going to be in A tier as far as carries are concerned, as far as speedsters are concerned. First 80 carry on the list, we got Greninja. Greninja's in S tier. This character is just a fantastic 80 carry, and what I mean by, well, you guys know what an 80 carry is at this point, right? It's an attack damage carry, meaning you deal the majority of your damage with basic attacks, but Greninja also falls into that more assassin type category. I was still a huge fan of Smokescreen and Surf, because I just think that's a really bloated kit. It's more of an assassin playstyle, but right now Double Team Water Shuriken seems to be the go-to because it's just really annoying to deal with. The character deals a large amount of sustained damage, it has built-in execute damage, percentage health damage, it has escapes in Double Team and in Smoke Bomb. It's just a fantastic character all around. It scales really well later on into the game, but it's not weak early game, which is pretty busted to have on an 80 carry. Normally 80 carries in any other MOBA, you have to scale up to a point of dealing, of dealing a large amount of damage with those basic attacks, but with Greninja and with Cinderace, they don't have that drawback, which is why they will always be a really strong choice, especially in solo queue. The reason why it's not in the dominant tier is that you are predominantly single target focused, and so while you do have some fantastic escape abilities and fantastic damage, you are somewhat limited in who you can attack at a time, and so for that reason, Greninja is still going to be an S tier, but phenomenal character. If your team needs an 80 carry, you can't go wrong with Greninja right now. What else have we got here? Let's do Cramorant. Cramorant's in a similar situation to Pikachu. They are both just strong lane bullies, really good at trying to secure that lane XP, those wild Pokemon camps, but they fall off later on in the game. And the nerfs that Cram saw a couple patches ago are still hurting it now. It can still do that, whole lane dominance thing, trying to steal wild Pokemon camps, but the stuff that kind of kept it in the game later on, like its Unite move, that saw a nerf as well. And so Cram, basically similar situation to Pikachu in that you're just going to be able to do a lot of good in a lane, but outside of lane, you are somewhat of a sitting duck. But that's the situation with Cram. Not much has changed with this guy. I don't know what they could do to buff him or move it around a little bit. I still don't think Dive. I think Dive is just clunky, and it would be different if Cram was an attack-based character. Then you could run Dive and you know, try and kite people around or whatever and use your basic attacks. It seems like they're trying to make it this like kind of weird basic attack hybrid, but hybrid builds just don't work in Pokemon Unite. So Cram, well, I don't want to say hybrid builds don't work in Pokemon Unite. It's just like Cram's basic attacks just are not worth actually speccing into in any way, shape, or form. And so Dive doesn't really work in my opinion. I don't really like the Hurricane Slash build either. I think it's called Hurricane Slash, whatever it's called, Vacuum Slash, I don't remember. But Cram, B tier. What else have we got here? Mr. Mime. I'm going to drop Mr. Mime to C tier. I had it in B tier before. It's not that Mr. Mime got nerfed or buffed or anything specifically changed. It's just that at the end of the day, Mr. Mime is still a support. And while it's probably the most impactful support from a carry perspective, you know, and trying to solo carry your team in a solo queue match, it's still a support. It still doesn't have that complete, you know, 100% carry potential. You can set up really nice plays for your team. You can prevent Zapdos steals. You can steal Zapdos yourself. That Unite move is incredibly powerful, but at the end of the day, it's still just a supercharged damage support. And so I'm dropping Mime down into C tier because I think that just kind of fits the situation better. I don't think it's necessarily in the same situation as like a Cram and a Pikachu, but Mr. Mime is just in my opinion, it's a fantastic like niche solo queue support. The problem with most supports in solo queue is that you are 100% reliant on your team, and even for like some of the best supports in the game traditionally, like an Eldegoss, whereas Mr. Mime, you can set up plays for yourself. You can actually deal damage and one-shot people and make solo plays, whereas some of the other sports you can't really do that. So Mr. Mime is in C tier. Machamp is in C tier. I think I had it in D tier last time. Machamp is a solid all-rounder. It's just that all-rounders right now, you are kind of heavily skewed with Charizard and Lucario. And Machamp got some nerfs to its damage, whereas some of the other all-rounders did not. They all got like buffs to their damage. So Machamp is just kind of in limbo right now. The character, because of submission, because of how good submission is, and his ability to self-buff himself with that Unite move, Machamp is always, in my opinion, going to teeter on the line between being really, really powerful and really, really weak, because submission is such a strong move. Being able to just run up to someone, be unstoppable, flip them, and CC them on the ground. And so right now it's kind of in a weak state. Let's be real. But you can go full damage Machamp build if you want to. It's pretty fun. I have a build for it on my channel if you want to go check it out. But I think right now C is just a decent place for it. It doesn't have the best matchups in the world. And if you're trying to solo carry your game, there are much better options for you. That's no disrespect to Machamp mains or anything like that. I just think that it's just in a bit of a rough spot. Could use some love. Let's see. Pray Your Team is good tier. You guys already know. Gardevoir, this character is just, it's not Gardevoir's fault. It is the state of Pokemon Unite's power curve and balance. It's just, it's a late game carry in a game that is designed specifically not for late game. That's just the reality of the situation. You have a character that needs to basically get carried through the early game, and once you actually get to that Gardevoir level where you're actually really impactful, are you impactful enough that it's okay that you miss the first 8 minutes of the game? The answer is no. In Gardevoir mains, I love you. I'm not saying this to disrespect you. I'm saying this to help you. Gardevoir needs some help. I mean, like, I've had a whole I have a whole video about power curves in Pokemon Unite and why characters like Garchomp and Gardevoir are in this situation. And it's just because of how Pokemon Unite is set up. Early game is so important. You can't afford, especially if you're in solo queue, to be routes for 5 minutes. You have to be able to fight for Dreadnoughts. You have to be able to fight for Rotoms. And if you are playing routes, I don't care how good you are, you do not have a single winning matchup other than a Gibble, probably, because you can teleport around the Gibble, right? That's the problem with Gardevoir, is that it's so weak early on. Even if you go Psyshock and you ignore the Future Sight, you try to come online earlier, the reality of the situation is that for the majority of the early game, you are helpless unless the enemy team massively screws up. Or if your team by some miracle just decides to all AFK and give you all of the farm. So Gardevoir is just not a good solo queue pick because you are so reliant on everybody else. And that's why it's in Pray Your Team is good tier. And it's going to probably stay there for the foreseeable future until Gardevoir sees some changes or until they revamp the power curve in Pokemon Unite. That's just the reality of the situation, guys. It's unfortunate. It's a fun character to play. There are, of course, some games where you can pop off and do really good. The Unite move is great, but the reality of the situation is you can use your Unite move maybe twice a match because of how late Gardevoir evolves. And you're just not that impactful. So, but the Size Shock build is probably the more impactful build. Even though Future Sight is fantastic and definitely the better choice, Size Shock is kind of needed in order to make Gardevoir actually exist in a game before 7 minutes. So, Gardevoir's in Prayer Team is good tier. Sorry, that's just how it is, guys. Okay, who else? Let's do this Decidueye, the elephant in the room. Decidueye is going in B tier. I toiled around with this. It's close to C tier, guys. If I'm being totally honest, it's close to D tier. It's close to any of those lower tiers. The only thing that's keeping Decidueye not in those lower tiers with the Garchomps and the Gardevoirs is that it is a basic attacking character. It is an 80 carry like Cinderace and like Greninja. That is the only saving grace. Those characters in general in Pokemon Unite are just busted in general, and that is the real saving grace for this Pokemon, because the reality of the situation is that it suffers from the same power curve problems as Gardevoir and Garchomp, except it has range. That's it. It has range. So, that's my opinion on Decidueye. I can talk about it in another video. I have a Decidueye build up. I'll have another one up soon. This character's damage output later on in the game is fantastic. The reality of the situation is, if another Pokemon looks at you, you will fall over. That's just the reality of the situation. And some people could say that's balanced. I would say it would be balanced if all 80 carries were balanced in that way. But the reality, I keep saying the reality of the situation because it is the reality of the situation, guys. 80 carries traditionally in MOBAs, they start off really weak and they need to build up to a point in late game where they take over and they can carry the game for their teammates. But before that point, they are the ones getting carried. And Decidueye is the first 80 carry in Pokemon Unite that actually falls into that line of thinking that every other MOBA has. The problem is that Greninja and Cinderace exist, and they don't. It's like they just threw the power curves at a board and said, this one gets a good power curve and this one gets a bad one. And the issue with Decidueye is it drew the short straw. It got the bad one. So the reality is, for the fourth time in a row, Decidueye has the balanced power curve for an 80 carry. It's pretty weak early on. It takes a while to get online. It is really squishy and requires tight positioning. It has no escapes. It deals a large amount of damage once it does get online later in the game. But its counterparts, its direct counterparts in Greninja and Cinderace get online within the first minute of the game, and they don't fall off. They just stomp for the rest of the game. So it makes Decidueye a pointless pick. As much as I think the character is cool, and I'm sure all of you guys think the character is cool, this isn't about picking favorites. It's not about this character's strong, this character's weak. It's about balance. And the reality of the situation, for the 19th time that I'm saying this, I need to find a better word, better phrase, is that against the Pokemon that are higher up on this tier list, Decidueye has basically zero winning matchups. Zero. Okay? If a Greninja finds you in the jungle, you're done. If Absol finds you, if Greninja finds you, if Charizard finds you, if Zeraora finds you, Talonflame, Lucario, Venusaur, you could go down the list. If any of these Pokemon find you in the jungle, or they find you at any point in the game and you are 1v1 and your team is not there to save you, you're done. That's the reality. I'm not going to say it again. That is the deal, guys. That's Decidueye's place right now. And you might be thinking, because I'm saying that, why is it not Pray Your Team is good tier? The only reason is that long-range, basic attack-based characters in Pokemon Unite, they are just phenomenally... They break the game, okay? That's it. That's the only reason. It does not have a strong early game. Even if you are super far ahead in late game, a Pokemon that's 2 levels below you, if they look at you, you can just fall over. You have no escapes. You have all damage. You're pure glass cannon. But unlike the Garchomps and the Gardevoirs, you have the ability to farm from range, to apply pressure from range. You're not Routes level of terrible early game. And if you actually do make it to late game and the enemy team isn't looking at you, then you deal a large amount of damage. Your damage output towards objectives is pretty insane. And for that and unlike the Cinderaces and the Greninjas, the basic attack pressure of a late game Decidueye is vast because of its ability to, with Razor Leaf specifically, because of its ability to go and hit multiple targets with its basic attacks. That cannot be overstated enough. Spirit Shackle is also really nice. I have that Decidueye Sniper build on my channel. That can be really nice to try and get around some of Decidueye's super weak points, and it also just has obnoxious range and objective stealing, as well as poke potential. It's just a super far range, and so for that reason, it's in B tier right now, but I'm really iffy about it. If there was another tier that would be B and below, it was just called B and below, it could be in any of those lower tiers, then Decidueye would probably be in it because it just fluctuates. You are really reliant on your team. You're really, 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 really reliant on your team. It's just if Pokemon Unite's balance, towards ranged basic attack characters wasn't so heavily skewed, it would be in Pray Your Team is Good tier. It's just the fact that the damage output later in the game for a character that deals basic attack damage, it somewhat makes up for it. But it's just not a good attacker pick, in my opinion, if you're playing solo queue. So it's in B tier. It does some damage at certain points in the game, but it has super obvious weak points. I'm really curious what y'all's opinion on this is. Drop a comment down below where you think Decidueye should be, because I'm really torn on this. Because I almost want to put it in Pray Your Team is Good tier. That's how iffy I am. I don't think it should be above B whatsoever. I'm sorry, anybody who loves Decidueye. I'm not trying to dunk on Decidueye at all, but it's not a top tier character, not even close. It's not. It can't be, because it loses to everything else. Everything. Literally everything. It's just if the enemy team stops looking at you for a second and you manage to make it to the point where you can actually deal damage, Decidueye can do good there. But the reality of the situation is that if any of the other Pokemon on the roster find you and they get close to you, you're done. So that's my opinion on Decidueye right now, but please let me know what you think. I'm really torn about it. Okay, sorry for that rant. Dominant, Talonflame. Talonflame, still, you guys know how I feel about Talonflame. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, solo queue characters you can possibly play in Pokemon Unite. It has phenomenal burst, phenomenal objective stealing potential, phenomenal scoring build potential. It's obnoxious to deal with if you are on the enemy team, because a Talonflame that is ahead has very little counterplay. You can go Brave Bird, Aerial Ace if you want to. I think that Fly Flame Charge is just a little bit more obnoxious to deal with, especially if you can get ahead, because your ability to traverse terrain and escape scenarios, right? Whereas Brave Bird is kind of an all-in type deal. If you pop a Fly and then you go and you Flame Charge out, you at least have additional escapes, and the cooldowns for all these abilities is super low. Its Unite move is fantastic for escaping, or if you want to go Buddy Barrier build, it's fantastic for trying to make some clutch Buddy Barrier Score Shield plays at the end of the game as well. This character is just so good all over the place. that I have to recommend it to you guys. If you're struggling with solo queue, Talonflame is a really solid pick. Check out I have so many different builds for Talonflame on my channel. Go check them out. I love this character. I think it's just really, really solid. The weak points that it has is, if you're trying to play it like it's a tank and you're trying to sit inside of a team fight, that's not what Talonflame is for. Talonflame is for jumping onto a carry, jumping onto a group of characters, hitting them for 75% of their health with one ability, and then you can get out free because your Unite move and your other ability cooldowns are super short cooldowns. I mean, Talonflame literally has the shortest Unite cooldown of any Pokemon in the game. It's just obnoxious. So Talonflame, fantastic character right now. Venusaur. Venusaur is in S tier still. This Pokemon, it still deals a massive amount of obnoxious damage with Giga Drain and with Petal Dance. It just still has phenomenal sustain. It has phenomenal movement. As far as special attackers are concerned, the sustained damage output of Venusaur cannot be overstated enough. It is just a really, really, really solid pick. If you are looking to play a special attack character, you can sit in team fights and just keep soaking up the HP. Alternatively, they buffed the living doodah out of Solar Beam, so you could go Sludge Bomb Solar Beam build as well and just delete people from across the map. Either way, this character is in a really, really, really good spot. And so you could play it in lane, you could play it in the jungle, do whatever you want. Venusaur is a really solid, probably one of the best special attackers in the game, if not the best special attacker in the entire game currently. So Venusaur is in S tier. Snorlax is in C tier. If you haven't watched any of my tier list videos before, put down your pitchforks. Snorlax is a phenomenal defender. One of the best defenders in the game, bar none. But if you are playing solo queue and you're trying to solo carry a game, Snorlax ain't it. That's just the reality. I'm not going to say it. That's just the situation. That's the deal with Snorlax, is that, and the deal with most defenders, honestly, is that even though this dude would be great if you're in a 5-stack and you need a tank, as far as solo queue carry potential is concerned, not really there. You're better off run Greedent, where you can actually deal out a large amount of damage while still doing that defender role. But again, Snorlax still a great character. It's just for solo queue, not so much. What else we got here? Blissey, another character that is in the Pray Your Team is Good tier. Blissey is just a fantastic support, honestly. The attack speed buff that it gives is great. It's just you are 100% reliant on your team. That's it. You're 100% reliant on your team. There's nothing you can do about it. All of the stuff that you do is to benefit your team, and you do it really well. But supports in solo queue is a thankless job. So big shout out to my support players. If you are playing supports like Eldegoss and Blissey, you definitely need to have those in solo queue matches. But if you are trying to solo carry yourself to master or something like that, you're putting your fate in the hands of your teammates if you're playing Blissey. So that's just, it is what it is, guys. Same thing with Wiggly. Wiggly is a really fun support to play. You can do some obnoxious things. It's really annoying to deal with. Sing is annoying. Rollout's annoying. Everything's annoying about Wiggly. But you are putting your fate in the hands of your teammates yet again. And so while someone on your team should be playing a support, I'm just saying, you probably, if you're trying to solo carry yourself, you probably don't want that person to be you, okay? And again, this is just a ranking, guys, okay? We're ranking. I'm not going off of, just, how can I say this? The reality is that, gosh, I keep going back to that word. The fact of the matter is, there are certain characters in this game that are just better for solo carrying than other characters. That's not to say that Wiggly and Blissey are necessarily bad characters. It's just, if you are in a game and you have one Pokemon to pick and you are betting your master rank on being able to win that game and have an impact in that game on your own, supposing the rest of your team is a bunch of robots with blindfolds on, you're going to have a much higher percentage chance of winning a game if you're playing something that can actually carry like a Zeraora versus something that can carry like a Blissey or a Wigglytuff. Makes sense? So that's the general situation. Eldegoss, very similar situation. I almost want to put Eldegoss up into D tier just because, you know what? I'll do it just for the sake of this. Eldegoss can help to, at the very least, solo carry a lane. And while I think that in general, Eldegoss should probably be in Pray Your Team is Good tier, like it has been for all the other tier lists. If you run like Muscle Band Eldegoss, it has a little bit more of a laning presence and has the ability to kind of pull whoever your laner is over the finish line, so to speak. So you can help carry your team a little bit better. There are some obnoxious Eldegoss builds where you can try and like 1v1 the enemy, the enemy laners with Muscle Band and just out-sustain them and stuff like that. And you do have potential to steal with your Unite move, like objectives, but the chances of that happening is close to 0. Let's be real. So I'm leaning towards Pray Your Team is Good tier, but for the sake of this video, I'm throwing you guys a bone here. I'm putting Eldegoss into D tier. It's a fantastic support, probably one of the best supports in the entire game. It's just that for solo queue, not going to be the optimal choice if you're trying to carry your own game. Sylveon, I'm tempted to put it into A tier, but as far as special attackers are concerned, sustained damage special attackers are just phenomenal right now. It's really abusive in lane. It's abusive in the jungle. It has the earliest Unite move of any damage dealer in the game, and that bumps it up a bit. It really does, because it gives you a lot more priority in those early game fights, especially securing that first Dreadnought. Securing the first Dreadnought is monumentally important in any Pokemon Unite game, or securing the first Rotom, whatever you feel like doing. In my opinion, first Dreadnought I think is still super important, and Sylveon is fantastic at doing that. It has full movement while it's using its abilities like that. If you go Calm Mind, you have a damage nullifier and a self attack steroid. So I just think that it is I think it's a really strong special attacker right now, and it can be played in a multitude of different lanes, and it has a team fight presence. So Sylveon is in S tier. Not as good as it was pre-nerf, of course, but still a good character nonetheless. Blastoise is going to be in B tier. The reason for Blastoise being in B tier is that unlike Snorlax and Swine, Blastoise's damage is still pretty powerful. And so it fulfills that defender role, but it also deals a large amount of damage. And I just have to put emphasis on the ability to still deal damage and have that impact in team fights, and that like 1v1 potential when you're playing solo queue. Because if you are just relegating yourself to only being a crowd control bot, or a stun bot, you are putting more faith in your teammates than you are putting it on your own back. And so while Blastoise definitely saw some damage nerfs which were needed, it's still a very powerful defender, and it's still on the higher damage threshold as defenders are concerned. And so Blastoise is going to be in B tier. Crustle is in B tier as well for a totally different reason. Crustle is obnoxious because of how it abuses Score Shield and Bunny Barrier. I've talked to you guys about this. I think I've made a build guide for it as well. This character, you don't really play it like other defenders. I mean, you could, but it's not as good at defending as some of the other defenders are. It's good at being obnoxious to deal with, securing objectives and scoring, because basically what you do is you pop Crustle's Unite move, you pop, and because of that, you pop Buddy Barrier, which stacks on top of each other, and then if you go to score, your Score Shield stacks on top of those shields, and the enemy team has to cut through like 5,000 HP worth of shields in order to stop you from scoring. If you want to toss Gold Getter on top of that, it's going to make it basically impossible to stop you from scoring. And that build in particular, that cheesiness, is really quite decent in solo queue. Usually you go Stealth Rocks with a Scope Lens just to have a better objective taking potential, because Stealth Rocks can crit, and it actually does a surprising amount of damage to enemy players and to objectives if you're going Stealth Rocks with Scope Lens, as weird as that sounds. So definitely give that a go if you're a Crustle player. I'm sure, I mean, 99% of Crustle players that's what they're doing. But that's why Crustle is a bit higher up on the tier list in regards to solo queue. It's because of that build specifically. It's just obnoxious. I don't think the X Scissor build is anywhere near as good. But yeah, Garchomp I'm putting in D tier. The only reason being is that I feel like, unlike Gardevoir, the pain that you go, I mean, it is Pray Your Team is good tier, right? In spirit, it's Pray Your Team is good tier. Like, Gibble should be down there. The only difference is that if you actually make it a late game as Garchomp, even though the payoff isn't really there, and you still get hard countered by anything with range, which is 90% of the roster, you at least have better objective taking potential, and you have some tankiness. And Garchomp saw a lot of buffs to try and help it out with like basic attacks and stuff like that. And so that's why it's got to be a notch above Gardevoir a little bit. If there was a Pray Your Team is good, or like a Pray Your Team is slightly better tier, then Garchomp would be there, but I'm just going to relegate it to D tier right now. It's and again, guys, this is not a personal attack on Garchomp, mates. I know there's a lot of you out there, and I love you. You guys know I like the character. I'm all about my chomps, but the guy is the same victim as, he's a victim just like Gardevoir and Decidueye is with these power curve problems, and he just has a lack of supporting cast around him, and they've buffed him, which is kind of a band-aid fix, but it still has some of the same issues that it had before, and so it's still got to be down there. I stopped myself there. The fact is that the rest of the roster runs all over Garchomp for the majority of the game. And, if you get to Gibble levels, or you get to Gabite levels, you can start to do stuff. You can pull people off of objectives, which is nice with the Dragon build. But still just in a rough situation. Cinderace is S tier still. This character is just nuts. It's one of the best 80 carries in the entire game. In my opinion, it's still just phenomenal. It starts off strong and it doesn't fall off, which is just so busted for an 80 carry in any MOBA. And Cinderace is no exception. Pokemon Unite, this power curve between Cinderace and Greninja just kind of throws off all the balance when it comes to Decidueye, because the reality is they should all share a similar power curve, in my opinion. But because they don't, these two, the Red Ranger and the Blue Ranger, just absolutely toss the Green Ranger in the dumpster and make, Green Ranger's life not so fun. So Cinderace, phenomenal character. You could go, you could still go the Blaze Kick Feint build, or you could go Pyro Ball Flame Charge build. I have a full build for Pyro Ball Flame Charge build on my channel. It's just a super fun build to play, especially, as you get better mechanically at Pokemon Unite, being able to weave in and out of fights, deal a large amount of damage from range. You got a great Unite move for, trying to secure KOs in team fights and stuff like that. The only reason why it's not in dominant tier, just like Greninja, is that it is a bit more single target focused, because you are, doing those basic attacks on single targets. The Pyro Ball build definitely helps out a little bit, but overall phenomenal character. Very similar to Greninja in that it's hard to build it incorrectly. So just a fantastic character. And last but not least, dominant Lucario. This character, I don't even know. Like, this character is going to just be good forever. It seems like it just has so many good things in its kit, has very little weak points. They nerfed its steadfast shield just a tiny bit, which helps it, which helps the people going up against Lucario a little bit. It gives it a little bit more of a window to actually attack him and have it be meaningful. But the reality is that he just is good at everything. He has high mobility, good damage, very tanky, great objective stealing potential, great team fighting potential. I mean, you just through everything good about any character. You toss it in Lucario, and because of that, it puts all the other all-rounders and anybody that would kind of fulfill the kind of bruiser role down on the tier list. That's just, you know, that's just the state of the game right now. So, you know, hopefully we can see some other all-rounders pop up. Maybe Lucario sees some other changes. I don't know, but this character, it literally can like 1v2 in lanes with zero problems at all. Zero. I don't know. It's just really fantastic character. You can't go wrong with any of those. You just can't go wrong with Lucario, guys. If your question is, should I buy Lucario? Try it out in practice. If you remotely like how it plays in practice, it's a good character. It's a really good character right now, and the nerfs really did not do too much to it. So it's phenomenal in team play, and it's phenomenal in solo queue. Just fantastic overall. You're going to be able to absolutely destroy a lane, and if you can destroy a lane, that helps your team win, and your team, you know, pushing your team ahead helps you win games in solo queue. So that's it, guys. That is the solo queue tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you like how this tier list ended up. I think I'm pretty comfortable with it right now. Let me know what you guys think about these rankings. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Just discuss. Again, this is just all my opinion. I'm more than happy to discuss it with you guys in the comments down below. So please drop a comment and let me know what you think. And I really, really want to know what you guys think about Decidueye, because this character, if someone else looks at you, you're gonna get KO'd. That's just the current state of the character. It does solid damage, but it loses to basically everything else above it here, and arguably some of these other characters below it. If I'm being totally honest, it's just basic attack. Long-range characters are just really busted in Pokemon Unite, and so that's why it's not in Pray Your Team is Good tier, in my opinion. But you guys let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are having a great time playing Pokemon Unite or playing, you know, Diamond and Pearl. And make sure you go and hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and the like button down below if you want to see more content like this. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Congrats to the eShop code winner from our last giveaway, and that's going to be it for me. The Damocles out.